What's up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a very late night edition of Shout at Buffalo Bills Football Podcast. Apologies to everybody. We are usually first out of the gates after these practices. You know, we're always excited, but Ryan, I had some stuff I had to deal with. My son has been having these headaches, and the last 48 hours have been just like you have two kids, like you're thinking of like the worst possible scenarios. And we went and got an MRI done, and I wasn't even going to talk about this, but it's just kind of like flowing out here at the top. It was really scary, and blood work done, everything like that. We'll see. Like the initial test came back very positive. We're in a really good place, but last 24 48 hours have been like very nerve-wracking whenever you think something's wrong with your children. But we have a lot to talk about from today. Good news. So we're in a positive place all of a sudden. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great now that I know it's, the positive news that you received, and family obviously comes first. So no problem at all with a late night edition of Shout when it's for a reason like that.
For sure. For sure. And, there's a ton to get to. And before we start on the observations, and I have like an overarching topic that I want to touch on at the start here. Before we get to that, housekeeping. This Saturday night, Wingnuts. We are live and in person, 6 p.m. Come out to Wingnuts, 1402 Millersport Highway. Come on out there. We'll probably have like the Minicamp wrap up, whatever that ends up looking like. We'll take a couple of fan questions as well. It's always a good time. The wings are delicious. The beers are going to be flowing. It's going to be a great time. Guess where I just came from, Ryan, just now?
Wingnuts.
Wingnuts, of course, because Caitlin couldn't wait till Saturday, and Lucas couldn't wait till Saturday. You got to pick the dinner spot, and that's where we went. So definitely come up for that. Also, insider text line. I have been firing them off today, Ryan. Before we went to the doctors, I was out at practice. I was sending all of my observations. The insiders have known for hours everything that happened at practice today. I've started to put out some videos, but I've held a couple videos back. Receiver videos. They're going to be dropping on the insider text line right after the show ends. So here's a little bit of a spoiler. You want to see those videos? Go and text 716-528-6727. Become an insider today, or go to joinsubtext.com/shoutbuffalobills. 2-week free trial, $3.99 a month. After that, you'll have access to me and Ryan Talbot. It's great.
It's awesome. It's worth every penny, Bills Mafia, and plenty to talk about with the wide receivers for that matter.
Plenty to talk about indeed. And, I want to start with the offense. And Scott Blakely says he wonders if they'll break tradition and practice on Friday. Actually, it's scheduled to end Thursday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday is the scheduled 3-day practice window. Traditionally, Sean McDermott doesn't practice the last day. He lets guys go a little bit early. They come, they show up, they do their thing. I'm wondering, Ryan, if they're going to practice on Thursday, the final day, to Scott's point, because today, without being like hyperbolic, this was the most concerning offensive day of padless practice that I've seen in quite a long time. Like I don't remember a Buffalo Bills offense being this sloppy, this like a lack of being buttoned up. And you don't want to overreact to it because it's OTAs. And so I asked Josh Allen about it after practice. I was like, how frustrating is this that you kind of come out here, you have all these new weapons, and it seems like you're, trying to get everybody on the same page. And he's like, I'm not frustrated at all. Like there's still a ton of, time before you play the first game. There's new pieces in. Some guys were making plays. We'll talk about a couple plays that were made, but for the most part, it was sloppy football, miscommunication, balls in the wrong place, poorly run routes, just guys not executing on the offensive side of the ball. This is a good defense. We know this is going to be a good defense, but it's just one of those things like, where's the level of concern when it looks this sloppy at this stage when they've been kind of putting all this thing together? Or is it not so much of a concern because there's so many new pieces that they're trying to get involved?
I mean, there should be some concern. I mean, no hitting the panic button or anything like that now. The defense is usually ahead of the offense this time of year, no matter who the team is. But with Buffalo, there needs to be a little bit of concern because, you mentioned there's so many new faces, so many new pieces. They have to build chemistry over these next few months. And Josh Allen was right. There's plenty of time before week 1. But this is almost an entirely new wide receiver room. You have Khalil Shakir, who we'll talk about how he exited practice early today here in a few minutes. But besides him, really, it's a lot of new faces in terms of players who are expected to be significant contributors this year. Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, MVS, guys of that nature. Some young players, Justin Shorter, who really didn't play during his rookie season, some UDFAs. So there's a lot there. And while time is still on Buffalo's side, you do need to start figuring out who's going to be a factor in this offense at wide receiver, who's not. Another encouraging day for Chase Claypool. So, there's good, there's bad. But from everything that you put out there on the insider text line, it sounded like a very, very sloppy day for the offense.
It really did. And there was a segment, and I guess this week we could start here. There was a segment where during 11 on 11, 4 or 5 plays in a row where it's like you're really concerned about them not being able to figure out a way to get out of a funk. And I'm going to bring up my chart here. So it starts off 11 on 11. This is shortly after Khalil Shakir limped off the practice field and then into the facility, didn't return the rest of the way. We won't get an update on that just because of the time of the year. But they throw the ball out 11 on 11. Allen has a really nice deep pump fake to kind of freeze the defense. And James Cook is wide open in the short area. Perfectly placed ball. James Cook drops it. So a storyline that we've already been talking quite a bit about is something that kind of rears its ugly head, I think, for the second time this spring. Like, this is something that, you want to, like, in the practice setting, put this completely to bed if your James Cook pops up again. Then it's an incompletion over the middle. How much frustration there for Josh Allen, as things hadn't been going well to that point in practice. He kind of airmails one over Dalton Kincaid's head. That's incomplete. I kind of just wrote, what is going on in my notes? Like, this is just an offense that just looks like discombobulated a little bit. Joe Brady at times looked very frustrated, in between periods. And this isn't like out of the ordinary. Usually Brady kind of brings the offense together a bunch of different times. He was standing with the quarterbacks. They were kind of going over things a little bit. It definitely looked like, I put a note in my notebook, and this is a point I want to make on Claypool too. The guy that looked like he really was urgent out there, playing with urgency to get the offense going, was Chase Claypool. Again, like, this is a note that I'm going to continue to kind of check off here as we go throughout the spring and the summer. When the offense was struggling, Claypool was almost the guy making a play, and I'll get to the play that he made later. Next, Allen goes to Dawson Knox, goes off his fingertips. Ball was completely thrown behind him. He really didn't have much of a chance. Hit his hands, but not one that you think that he's going to make. And then the next, they run a James Cook run. And then on the next play, Allen looks down the field for Tyrell Shavers, falls or slips. I couldn't really tell. Might have actually been a physical exchange with Kyer Elum, who was in coverage. Either way, the ball's thrown out there. Kyer Elum is there. Shavers is on the ground. Elum makes the interception and starts his way back the other way. So a horrible sequence for the offense in that spot.
Yeah, just about everyone that you want to see contribute. It has a drop or errant pass from Josh Allen. But this is what's going to happen with new players, a new offense that's being implemented and worked in, shaking off some of the rust. I know that some of these guys have been here the last few weeks for OTAs, but it does take some time to get into a groove. As for the positives, Chase Claypool, he needs to keep that sense of urgency all summer, not just for this Bills offense and trying to get them going, but obviously for himself. We've talked about this. This is a player that is trying to show that he can still not just hold on to a job in the NFL, Matt, but still be a contributor. And he needs that urgency to show to this coaching staff, I can step up. I can help this team out in crucial moments. Now, no one sitting here in June is saying that he is going to have a major role on this offense, but he could be a red zone weapon. He could be wide receiver 5 when all is said and done, and that would still get some opportunities for him. So it's good to see he's at least building upon what we've seen the last few weeks in OTAs since he's become a member of the Bills. Like you said a few weeks ago, leaving the baggage at the door, coming in, fresh start, trying things out. So there is some good among the bad.
For me too, like Tyrell Shavers is a guy that, has gotten a lot of buzz over the last couple of weeks because Brandon Beane keeps mentioning his name. And when you see him out there, like he was running some routes versus air, I'm going to send a couple videos out with him in the early portion of individual. You see the talent, you see the size, the fluidity with which he runs, the speed, all that's evident. But if you get to camp and you're trying to make an impression in a very crowded wide receiver room, like you can't have those plays where you fall down and it leads to a turnover. You have to try to like build trust with Josh Allen so that he wants to put you in a spot to give you opportunities to make plays. And Shavers with a couple of missed opportunities today. There was another deep ball that he couldn't track. He didn't track the ball well. So that's something that now I'm going to be watching for as well. Like, is there any tracking issues? Like there's always something for a UDFA like Tyrell Shavers was. There's always something in their game that led to scouts, teams dropping them off their boards or not feeling comfortable being aggressive on day 3. Maybe that's a part of Shavers' game that he's got to continue to work on, is being able to like track the ball and the deep ball. And that's something that if he's going to make this team, he's got to find a way to do that. Now, the guy that he's probably in heavy competition with, Justin Shorter, horrible drop today, Ryan. Like across the middle, it was a little high, but Shorter's athleticism, it's so easy for him to go up and get a ball like that. That's what he has to offer you. That like skill set goes right through his hands. It's a huge drop, huge deflating kind of moment there. And it's like you're waiting throughout practice for somebody to step up and make a play. And in the final period of practice, it ends up being Chase Claypool who energizes the offense. He catches a deep ball down the field from Mitch Trubisky. Super like urgent, like catching the ball, finishing the play, popping right up, running the ball back to the huddle, like getting back out to the line of scrimmage, like being definitive, being energetic. And, he continues to kind of ascend where guys where you're hoping to see some ascension, like Shavers, Shorter, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who had, I don't even want to say it was a drop. Like he got almost like flipped around into a pretzel, but that's what goes to like miscommunication on the throw from Josh Allen, whether it was Allen's fault or MBS's fault. Like he's got to be the vet. He's got to be the guy that's like showing these younger guys how it's done. And it just hasn't looked like that enough of the time.
Yeah, and when it comes to Shavers and Shorter specifically, these are young players still entering year 2, but they're going to have that sense of urgency. They have to kind of almost think like a veteran player, like one of those bottom of the roster guys, like what a Chase Claypool is right now. And another receiver who made some nice catches today, Andy Isabella. Isabella was a former second-round pick, but he hasn't necessarily panned out in this league in terms of production. But he hangs around because he makes plays in the practice setting. He does enough over the course of the summer. I remember when the Bills brought him in last year in the summer, and very quickly he moved up the depth chart during training camp in terms of opportunities and making the most of that. Those guys that have been in this league longer, they know that they need to make the most of these opportunities now in July and August. And even if they don't make that initial 53-man roster, they're going to be on the practice squad. They're going to get those opportunities. You want to believe that guys like Shorter, who obviously was a draft pick 1 year ago, and Shavers, who seemed like a priority UDFA, will get some more opportunities. But if they have bad summers, it opens the door for either veterans on this roster, those, bottom of the roster guys that get cut elsewhere, or just, some other guys that are just kind of sitting there waiting for an opportunity. Maybe guys playing in the UFL right now that are looking for chances in camps and things like that. So, young or not, you have to start making the most of these opportunities now.
The other thing here too, thank you to my beautiful wife who got me some water and brought it down for me mid show. The other thing too is like looking at this wide receiver room. We talk about that a ton, like the weapons and who's going to step up and be a weapon. Like Dalton Kincaid, I mentioned the drop today. He also had like a highlight reel play that was like oh my gosh, the start of 7-on-7, you see the athleticism and, start to think about the possibilities. Went up and just absolutely mossed a defensive back. I don't know if it was a safety. I thought it was maybe Cole Bishop, poor Cole Bishop, if it was, but it happened so fast, and the practice had just started, that portion. So I had my notes on. I was like kind of writing down. So I couldn't really tell who it was on, but it was one of those plays where Kincaid got on a ladder, went all the way up to the top of it, made this catch, physical at the point, the catch point, comes down with the ball, and it made it look so easy. And despite the struggles, like one little like positive caveat I'll throw in here. You see Dalton Kincaid, you see Dawson Knox walking around the practice field today, just like no cares in the world, all smiles. Like that vibe is out there, even on a day when it wasn't great. And it goes back to the earlier conversations we've been having throughout the offseason, and just like the vibe around this team and like the excitement around building something new. And you mentioned it. Maybe it is a little bit of all right, you're installing a lot of new concepts that Joe Brady has, and maybe this is the shaky part of it, and they come out tomorrow. And we've seen this in training camps past, right, Ryan, where they come out, the offense has a bad day, they got to go back to the film room, make adjustments, and they come out and things look better the next day. That's very possible for tomorrow. And then as we look ahead to training camp, it's just in the moment when you're hoping that some answers start to appear when there's a day like this. It's just like, all right, who's going to step up and make plays when they need them?
Yeah, you're reading my mind. I was just going to say, less than 24 hours from now, we could be singing a completely different tune. That's the beauty of this time of year. For the errant passes or the high passes that Josh Allen maybe had today that he'd like back, maybe he's right on the money today. Maybe James Cook makes a big catch downfield and for what would be like an easy score or a big gainer. Maybe you do get some of these younger guys stepping up. That's the beauty of all of this. But it's still okay to be somewhat concerned. Like I said earlier, you and I are not pushing any panic buttons right now. We're not going to overreact, but it's okay to have some, level of concern or worry, because James Cook is still dropping the ball in these situations. And you lose a player to an injury, and we don't know. I see in the comments here, is it serious? You already mentioned this at the top of the show. We won't really know much about that. But the one thing you want coming out of this week is no injuries, and the Bills are already a little bit banged up based on the players who are not on the field today, and you throw a Shakir in. So it's okay to show some level of concern.
Speaking of players that weren't on the field, I mean, the injury list was alarming when Sean McDermott ran it out today. I mean, you see the Bills go out and make a couple of pre-minicamp tryout additions, and you're like, what's kind of going on here? And it was the Bills signed Hassan Hall, running back, two linebackers, Stephen Hillis and Shaq Quarterman. Quarterman, a former 4th-round pick of the Jags. He had to play today. He made a pass breakup for the defense. So that was a feather in his cap. Somebody to watch, like, is maybe like a fringe chance at getting a roster spot. We'll see. But if he does get one, that goes to show the concern that they have about the depth. Nick Morrow, he's banged up. Dorian Williams, he's banged up. They're not participating. Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, they didn't practice today. Tons of injuries across the board. We'll get to some bright news on the injury front, but man, there's a lot of people not participating right now.
Yeah, and that's just why you bring in these workouts and tryout type of players. And Quarterman, had some interest from the Bills back in his draft class. So no surprise with him being available. The Bills kind of kick the tires on him and see what he looks like. Always positive when you can come in and make a play at your first practice. Usually bodes well and can lead to good things, but they've taken some hits already, obviously at linebacker, running back right now, just based on this initial injury report and who was not out there today. So definitely something to monitor here over the next few weeks, especially once we eventually get to training camp.
Thank you to everybody that has shared a kind message in the comments. I really appreciate that. Little man is doing well. He came home tonight, and I think he's reading his Harry Potter book up there. So all good things at the moment. So on the bright side of things for the Bills, some good injury development. I mean, I did not expect to see Matt Milano on the practice field in any capacity other than working off to the side. And lo and behold, he's listed as limited. and he comes out on the practice field, and I put a couple videos out in the insider text line of Milano working out, and it's like picking up like right where he left off. It's like you see him out there, and it's I think we're trending in a direction like Ryan. If we get to the first padded practice and Milano's out there in a red jersey, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he looks like he's on track. This is a very positive development and an important one, because we talked a little bit to Terrell Bernard today about everything. And remind me before we go, I want to get back to one more thing on Josh Allen. I just remembered before we totally move off of that whole thing. But, listening to Terrell Bernard talk about the communication and the chemistry that the two of them had early last season, it's interesting. They only played 5 games together, but when they were on the field, it's almost like there was a seamless transition from Tremaine Edmonds. They looked like the communication was at a high level. They played off of each other so well. So it's almost like, all right, you want to see a larger sample size and see like, what's the limit to this? Like, is there a ceiling? Are they going to reach a completely new level? And so, Terrell Bernard was all smiles talking about Milano being back out in the field today. He didn't participate in team, but this is the kind of step that you're looking for.
And it's so funny because you mentioned it. It's like those first 5 weeks, they were playing at such a high level. We didn't even know that Bernard was going to be the guy for most of the summer because of an injury at training camp. We didn't know what that was going to look like come week 1 in terms of replacing Tremaine Edmonds. And he played at such a high level. And if there's one silver lining in that injury from Milano, you didn't see Bernard's play falter once Milano left last year against Jacksonville. You just saw him ascend into that, I don't want to say superstar status, but he quickly became a household name for Bills fans. He's someone that you said, this guy is really, really good. So he was able to learn on the job without having a Matt Milano there to communicate with, a guy that knows all the ins and outs of this defense. So now you're expecting this to be something maybe pretty special. As for Milano, I don't want to, overplay news, but I would say this is huge news, Matt, because as of even the draft, right after the draft was over, Brandon Beane hosts that season ticket holder where you have like the Q&A session, and they were talking about this was an injury they really hadn't ever dealt with before. It wasn't just a traditional injury. There was a lot of mystery around it. How long is it going to take him to come back? Is he going to be ready for training camp? Is he going to be the same player? And for him to be just even limited today is such huge news for this defense, because he is the heart and soul of the defense right now.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, like, he's going to go out there and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a captain, right? Like, he's going to be one of the Bills' captains this year.
Yeah.
You look at probably like a Von Miller if they go 3 defense. Let's actually play that game. Who are the 3 captains? I think Taylor Rapp could somehow push his name into the bucket. You heard the way that Sean McDermott was talking about him today.
Taron Johnson.
Okay, I'd go Taron Johnson
him.
over Taylor Rapp.
And maybe even Ed Oliver. Give Ed Oliver a nod up front there.
Okay.
So you're saying 3 on defense is what you said, correct?
If you had to pick 3 on defense, I like those.
Taron, Ed, and then I'd go with Milano, but Bernard you can make a case for as well. But Milano has just spent so much for this defense. So
has Milano ever been a captain? He's not a super vocal.
He's not vocal guy, but I almost feel like I don't know, because they throw so many out there on the special teams too. And
I just feel like every time you talk to one of his teammates, they just like Lano, right? Like right. They light up talking about him. And I feel like that kind of energy, could potentially mean captain. I don't know. We'll see. That'll be fun to think about. We'll play this game a couple times over the summer. Our answers will probably change each time. And then on the other side, offense, Josh Allen, Dawson Knox, and Deion Dawkins. Like, is that a trio? A Curtis Samuel, perhaps? I don't know. What would you think besides Allen?
Yeah, I don't know if they would give it to Curtis in his first year with the Bills. Great player, great leader from everything I've been told. So, I mean, it's a possibility. But when you look at this, I think Deion Dawkins makes a ton of sense. Definitely Josh Allen. I don't think any of the running backs necessarily fit, check all the boxes. Just, and that's not a knock on James Cook, but he's another very quiet guy. Teammates love him. Not a vocal player by, any means. Don't know if you'd go Kincaid just yet either. So I think Knox still makes a lot of sense as that third option.
All right, back to practice here. And before we do get back to that, we'll talk about Keon Coleman. I see a question about him. I have a thought on Keon Coleman and what I'm looking for in terms of a jump over the offseason or over the 6 weeks between minicamp and training camp. I'll get to that momentarily. But sign up to become an insider right now. The Shout Insider text line. It'll get you locked in. 2-week free trial. You just want to be in the door for the start of training camp. We have plans, Ryan, and this is actually a cool time to do it because I asked for questions earlier this week. Tomorrow, when I get to the stadium, I'm actually going to film a couple videos answering these questions. And the cool thing is you're going to be featured in these videos if you ask a question. So it's really fun. It's a good experience, like all around. You get access to Ryan and I, all of our observations, ask a question, all of our takes on the Bills, all the reporting we send into the insider text line first. And it's brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Litro, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give Carrie a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. All right, let's get into Keon Coleman for a moment because okay, fine. I'm signing up. Boom. Nailed it. 716-528-6727. Send it a text. You'll get locked in. $3.99 a month, $50 a year. Ryan, you can't beat that.
No, you cannot beat that. It's a great price. I mean, throughout this, football is a year-round sport. I know there's a week one, there's a Super Bowl, but as soon as that's over, we start talking about free agency. We talk draft. We talk about all of these OTAs, mini camps, training camp, you name it. As our friends say at another outlet there, this train never stops, correct?
Shout out to Maniac and the boys. Hope they're doing
Right.
well. All right, Keon Coleman. So had a catch. He kind of ran a funky route and kind of screwed up a route by James Cook at one point early. You could see just not being in the right place at the right time. Kind of went back to the huddle, came out a couple plays later and was very deliberate with the footwork, kind of a bounce back, ends up making the catch on a short throw from Josh Allen. Good. You see progress, right? Like make a mistake, go back, figure it out. Watching him, there's not a ton of plays to digest from today. And maybe that'll change. We'll have more to get into tomorrow. But it just looks like a guy that's when you first, start a college class and maybe it's outside of your major and it's a prereq and it's not your cup of tea and you got to get in the book and you got to spend time. And then when a teacher asks you a question, you're kind of waffling a little bit and you don't know what to say. That to me looks like Keon Coleman right now. Like he's learning at such a rapid speed, a very complicated offense, and he just doesn't look super confident right now. And, it'd be a better question for him. I haven't asked him this. He hasn't said this. This is just my perception watching him out there. I think we're going to see a completely different guy, a week or two into training camp when he gets a chance to go through all of this, look back at it on the tape. Like the pads haven't even come on yet. So he hasn't even gone through a padded practice. I'm almost holding off on my overarching take on Keon Coleman until we get kind of a chance to see all that.
And I think that's fair. And like you said, you're digesting a lot as a rookie, and it's like anything. No matter what job you have, if you go back and remember your first few weeks on the job, you were probably sitting there saying, well, what do I do in this scenario? What do I do, as an educator? What do I do on the first few days of school in that first week? You don't just jump right into the books. So there's a learning process, and then you start getting comfortable and acclimated to it. And then it just becomes kind of second nature. So you're right. Kind of hold off on any kind of assumptions about him in this rookie class. Kind of give them some time when bright spots occur, like Javon Solomon today or things like that. We'll note it, but you also don't want to rush to judgment on any of these players yet.
For sure. I think that's a great way to put it. I do want to get to the defensive side of the ball here, and there were a couple of performances today, or a couple plays that I think are worth mentioning and getting on your radar. Before we do, one more thing on Josh Allen, and Scott Blakely mentioned it, and I do want to hit on that. Last week, it's kind of funny, like what we're able to report and not report, like things that happen in the field house when it's not practice time. We're seeing things because we're in there, and you kind of never know what exactly is, on the table and what's not. But Josh talked about it today. They brought in, I forget his first name, but his last name's Hess. I think Charlie Hess, maybe. Excuse me if I messed that up. He's a digital mapping expert, and computer data. They set up all these cameras, and Josh did this a couple of years ago where he threw with Jordan Palmer. This Hess gentleman came out and set up all the cameras, and he threw a bunch of passes, and then they get all the data on the computer and show you like what you're doing wrong in your mechanics as a thrower. Well, they brought the whole shebang out to Orchard Park last week, and Trubisky did it. Allen did it. I think Bouchel did it as well. And, Josh talked today about like messing around again or tinkering with his mechanics, because there were some things last year when he got hurt. When your body gets hurt, right? Like you have to make up for whatever is hurt.
You
Overcompensate. So you're not hurting yourself worse. And so I think Allen tweaked his delivery a little bit because of that. And he was throwing from a different arm angle, I think a little bit lower, something that he wanted to get away from now that the injury is passed. So they did all the mapping. So he's tweaking things. And like you see all of that kind of happening off to the side. He talked about it a little bit today. I think you should go back and listen to Josh talk about it today. It was interesting. You wonder how much that might have played in to some of the struggles that are happening right now as he's trying to, lock back in the kind of mechanics that, helped him ascend to where he did.
And even the year before last, he had a shoulder injury, and there was about a 4-week span where the motion was different, the throwing motion, the passes were a little bit higher. And once it heals, there was still like a little bit of a process to get back to the old mechanics, and it can affect your stride in terms of your throw, the steps that you take. So, you don't think that one injury affects so much throughout your entire body, but the hip rotation, you name it. So it's good to have the people come in to chart what you're doing, to see, okay, here's what I need to do. I need to work on this arm angle. I need to do this. I need to take a smaller step, whatever it is. It's good for him though, to kind of recalibrate, I guess, and good for all the quarterbacks to kind of see what they can work on to improve their throwing motion and just maybe accuracy overall.
We heard from Gable Steveson today, so we can touch on that a little bit as well if we have time at the end. If not, we'll come back with that later in the week, because we're going to have at least 2 more shows this week. The Bills practice tomorrow, so we'll have a practice wrap from that. If they go Thursday, we're talking about maybe saving that Thursday show for Saturday at Wingnuts. We'll figure that out. But there was one, I bring up Gable Steveson, a guy that never even took a snap of high school football, right? Like I didn't even know, like he never even thought about playing. Ooh, Aaron Rodgers. I want to talk about that too. Wow, we have so much here, Ryan. We have so much in the pot. Let me just say this on Aaron Rodgers, like a real quick thing. It says a lot about a person when you know that everything you do is under a microscope right now, coming off of the season that they had last year. The hard knocks, the injury, the vice president stuff, all of the distractions. All you have to do is show up to minicamp and get done with it. You get your whole, and he doesn't show up to minicamp. Like it literally lives up to every impression and take I've ever had about Aaron Rodgers since he went to the Jets. And to me, that's why they are definitively number 3 in this division, because of the distraction that he continues to be.
Which is so funny because he talked about there being no distractions. The distractions have to, leave New Jersey or whatever, in terms of we need to keep all distractions out. And you're right. Then he goes on the whole VP thing, being a candidate. And today he's not excused, so he's going to be fine for that. But it's some event that was really important to him. Obviously wasn't a family reunion based on everything we know about Rodgers, but I'm sure time will tell what that event was. At the same time, like you said, there's no excuse for him not to be at practice on a year for the Jets, where this is a huge year for the head coach, the GM. you're probably talking rebuild if this goes awry or goes badly.
Hi, Jason. This is live. Welcome to the party,
Hey,
my
Jason.
friend. A little bit late. We usually do these at about 4:00, but we are live late here on a Tuesday night, and we're about to flip gears here to some defensive performances that were impressive. And let's start with Kyer Elum, because
Yeah.
I dropped a bold prediction on Danger and Battaglia today. They said, who's somebody that we're not talking about now that we're going to be talking about in training camp and in the summer? Kyer Elum. I think Kyer Elum is going to have a meaningful role on this defense to start the season. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be a starter, but what I do think is going to happen is either he's going to push so hard for a starting job that maybe he unseats Christian Benford or Rasul Douglas, or they take into consideration the injury history for Christian Benford and say, we want Kyer Elum and Benford to rotate to try to limit the reps for Benford to try to keep him healthy later into the season. Interception today. I just noticed Kyer Elum out there today. You know, I mentioned Dalton Kincaid earlier in the show and just like the free nature to the way that he was kind of operating out on the field and on the sideline. That was, you all right, Ryan?
Yeah. Yeah. In the chat. So someone said my guy Ryan T. So I was just saying hey to him.
Okay, I just thought you hit a bunch of buttons and then enter. Okay, that is the handle there. Nice. I love the interaction. But I think Kyer Elum has looked the best he's ever looked. Like, and I don't want to be hyperbolic. Like, don't take that and tweet it and run with it. I just mean he looks so calm and comfortable and confident. He had a little bit of Keon Coleman going on the first 2 years, right? Like, you know, uncomfortable because of the scheme, trying to figure all of that. And now I feel like he has a guy in his corner in Jamil Adai. They seem to be kind of attached at the hip, developing that rapport, and a team that's obviously given their stamp of approval in that, hey, we want to make this work. We didn't trade you. We didn't float it out there that we wanted to trade you. We want this to work. We want you to be a part of this situation.
Yeah, real quick, you should really clip that part that you just said a few seconds ago about don't take this, quote and run with it. Because 1 week ago, you talked about Chase Claypool and how well he was doing. And when you typed in Buffalo Bills to Google, every Chase Claypool story had Matt Parrino, Syracuse.com. They took your words and, man, did they ramp it up like this was the only receiver out there playing. And that's not your fault. I was just thinking in my head, I said, boy, that's perfect, because last week people were taking your words and twisting them a little bit like he's the best receiver the Bills have. Now I said
he was the most consistent. I said
right.
he was the most consistent.
But like there was a Fox Sports segment about, the Bills are in trouble if this is your most consistent guy out there. And
you have to send me that. Was that a Nick Wright segment?
No, and now I'm trying to it's all he drives me nuts.
Oh, Emmanuel Acho.
No, he really drives me nuts, but that's not him either. I'll have to find it and send it to you. They didn't use your name in the Fox Sports one, but I watched the video clip and I was like, well, they're citing, what you wrote. But there's SI.com, USA Today, and
I get the Google alert email for my name. Just because like you like to track what people like. I gotta tell you, there's a couple of these websites, dude, like heavy.com. Like I'll put out a just in like
observation
tweet, observation, and they'll make an entire headline. Insider says blah 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 da 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 da. It's like, wait a second, what? Like, did you really go to this extreme based on what I just said? I'll have to pull out an example at some point and share it. But I mean, Claypool's been good. Right. Everybody that opens their mouth to talk about Chase Claypool raves about him. Now, the one pushback is, well, he's been great everywhere. He was great in Chicago in OTAs. He was great in Pittsburgh in OTAs. What does that matter? You're right. It doesn't matter. But like the alternative is they signed him to a 1-year deal and he looks terrible in OTAs. And it's like you're thinking about cutting him. Like, I think this is an opportunity. Josh Allen mentioned that today. It's a guy that everybody around the building is noticing, a guy that's coming in here and trying to make an impression.
Yeah.
What more can you ask of a person who is like obviously had his troubles? Like Josh said it, his highs, his lows in the league. He's trying to take advantage of an opportunity. If he hits, that's where I really like. I want to fast forward if he were to hit and just see the commentary
Right.
around it. Then Brandon Breen is brilliant to go out and take a chance on Chase Claypool. What a visionary. The Bills, this was a great move from the start. All these kinds of things. Meanwhile, half those people will be like, the Bills should have never done this. This is a risk-free move. So whether or not he's good or not is irrelevant. Now, I will say, those that are like pushing back saying, well, if Claypool is your best, what do you have? And I think there's some merit in there. Like, this is a group that like is going to have to prove that it has competent players in it. I think Curtis Samuel, I believe in him quite a bit. And I think from Brady's belief in him, what he can do inside, outside, what he's done in the past as a running back, like there's all these things. I think he was a running back in, what was it now? High school?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. High school. Yep.
Across the board, tons of exciting players. How does it mesh? That's the question. And if it doesn't, the questions are going to intensify.
Oh, 100%. And, I know what you meant when you said earlier, but it matters to Chase Claypool for sure. I mean, this is an opportunity for him to stick with the team, to try to get his career back on track. But, I threw us off topic and I apologize. Going back to Kyer Elum.
Yes.
Elam has a new lease on life with some new coaches in the secondary, and possibly, and speculation on my part, maybe they're not going to just be so zone heavy. Maybe they do throw in a little bit more man, which is more his game, more his skill set. So there's a chance for him to maybe be a bigger contributor. So in terms of what you told Danger and Battaglia about a player who we're not talking about enough, he makes a ton of sense. I could see some younger players, Javon Solomon, who we can talk about here in a minute, possibly playing a bigger role out of the gate than some people anticipate. There's going to be some guys in that secondary too, in terms of the safety position, that I think are going to be talked about more as the year goes on, whether it's a Cole Bishop or a veteran in that safety room. So there's a lot of candidates, but it's hard to go against Elam in terms of this might be the guy that we're not talking about enough.
I also have to admit this, huge gaffe on my part. This is the quickest I've flipped so definitively on a player's standing on the roster at this time of the year. And also like kind of mad at myself a little bit for my 53-man roster projection a couple weeks ago that had DeMar Hamlin as a cut. He's a roster lock for me at this point. Like a roster lock. I flipped that much on it. And I kind of should have seen this coming with like a full off season. Like last season was like this huge deep breath for him, right? Like you come back from what he went through, and just stepping in the football field again had to be so much. And I think the Bills do a great job of listening to their players, even if it's not something they're saying, but like how they're acting, how they're feeling, not rushing them back into anything.
Yep.
The fake punt notwithstanding, but they did a really good job of like not putting too much on DeMar's plate. And all he's done this offseason is come in and look like the guy that we saw fill in for Micah Hyde 2 years ago. So
right.
I think Hamlin's played so well that you really can put Micah Hyde on ice and say, listen, maybe we'll look you up in November or December if there's a huge injury and you still want to play, but I'm not in any rush to do that, because you got now 4 guys, 2 of them that I think you could say are starter caliber in Edwards and Rapp, a guy you're developing in Bishop. I got another hot take that I dropped on Danger and Battaglia we talk about in a second. But I think Hamlin is a lock to make the roster.
I don't necessarily disagree. He can play special teams. He knows the system maybe better than anyone in that safety room based on the time he's been here. You kind of mentioned it already. Last year should not be looked at as a part of, I don't want to say a part of his career, but it was almost like a red shirt season despite being on the roster. They weren't in any rush to get him on the field. They were easing him back in from something that really hasn't happened on a football field in terms of the cardiac arrest from the prior year. How do you ease someone back into football after that? For the player, for the coaching staff, there had to be a lot of questions. And now, you're another year removed from that. And you saw that he could he couldn't, withstand playing on special teams and playing here and there when called upon. And now it's time to kind of ramp it back up and give him that opportunity to show what he can do. And he's made play after play in these practice settings that bodes well for his roster chances for sure.
Speaking of roster chances, the depth at edge rusher is going to be so incredible to watch this spring or this summer. They got to add another guy, right? At some point, like that. I think that unless we get to a point where Dwayne Smoot really like energizes that room, I've not noticed him at all. Like since they signed him, like I to the point, Ryan, where, and maybe this is on me and I should do a better job. He's number 94. I can't remember seeing 94 one time. You know, a number that I've seen consistently though, 99. I think I was wrong on that too. Casey Toohill's got some juice, dude. Like he had a sack today. He's super fast. And maybe because he's so like compact and explosive, he excels without pads on because it's not about the power. It's about the quickness. So maybe that you don't want to get too high on a guy like that. I'll reserve like hyperbolic statements for training camp on Toohill, but a nice rep from Javon Solomon today, get himself a sack. I feel like just getting that sack for a guy in this period is like super confidence building. The one caveat is he was working against Travis Clayton and
sure,
dude, we got a long way to go for Travis Clayton. And that's okay. Same thing with Gable Steveson. Like we got a long way to go with these guys, but put them in their proper context,
Yeah. Super, super raw guys in those instances. But, let me start with Solomon. The reason I think Solomon might have a bigger role than some people expect is I like him as a situational pass rusher. When it's an obvious pass rushing down, third and long, he has the bend, he has the speed. I don't see him as a part of the regular rotation playing significant reps. Casey Toohill, though. Toohill is so interesting. After the Bills signed him this spring, I went back and I looked at his season last year with the Commanders. He was very productive when he had a small, limited role on that defense, when he was just like the number 4 guy in the rotation. As we know, the Commanders traded away Chase Young. They traded away a few of their star D linemen at the trade deadline. And when they traded away Chase Young, it gave Toohill more reps. And he did not do much with those reps. He actually struggled. I thought he looked a lot worse when he played more reps. In Buffalo, though, that's the good news. He's not going to be out there playing significant reps, Matt. You have Von Miller, who's, by all accounts is going to still have a big role on this team in terms of coming off of the edge. You have Greg Rousseau. You hope he stays healthy because you know what he can do. AJ Epinesa last year was having a career year. Passes, defense in terms of also getting after the quarterback, sacking the quarterback. You expect him to have a sizable role. If Casey Toohill, is DN number 4, DN number 5, that's perfect in terms of the juice, in terms of what you're going to get out of him, those situational plays, those games where he might have a sack or even 2. He had one multi-sack game last season when he was part of that rotation and he was on the further down the depth chart. So in Buffalo, if that's his role, I think he can be a fine addition to the D-line.
I agree. Balen Spector, he wasn't out there today. Dude, he is on the wrong side of the roster bubble for me. I mean, this guy is a walking injury. He's a walking injury. Like every time an injury report comes out, doesn't matter what time of the year it is, Balen Spector's name's on it. I mean, you got to get it does
suck. When you see him out there, he's flying around. He's making plays. Whether you're talking about a practice setting, whether you're talking about when he's been called into action in actual games, but availability is so important, not just to the Bills, to every team in the NFL. And this is now, it just seems to continue to happen, Matt. You're right. So you're on the wrong side if you can't stay healthy. Now, do I think the Bills could get him on their practice squad if that's the case, if he doesn't make the roster? I do. I think, but, it's still one of those things where you want to see him out there and playing and pushing for a roster spot. But if he can't stay healthy, that's not going to happen.
All right. Final note here. We gotta get out of here. We're at 50 minutes, dude. We said we're gonna go 30.
We always do this.
We'll
just do it. We'll just do 30, and then it's like 50 minutes later.
And my voice is going like, I'm like, oh, we got to get off this thing. My voice is shot. Look up at the clock, 50 minutes in. Thank you so much for everybody for watching. Almost up at 1,700 live viewers here on a Tuesday night. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel as well if you're watching on YouTube. We really appreciate that. June 16th, 15th? What's Saturday?
15th,
6 p.m. Wingnuts live show. I'm going to get the event page up and locked and loaded on Facebook tomorrow. Come out, hang out with us. We'll talk Bills football. It'll be the last big show before the start of the summer. The patio's open at Wingnuts. It's going to be awesome. Final note. Corey Couch, cornerback, number 9 on the Bills, number 33 in your media guide. Phenomenal interception today. Like, just phenomenal. Dude fights through contact, fights through, I think, another offensive player to get to the ball, rips the ball away from Xavier Johnson. It was just a sensational play. I want to give him his praise there, because this is a guy that, you know, we talked a little bit about, what was his name? I don't want to mess it up. Kanai Lovely, earlier at rookie minicamp, to Corey Couch, another UDFA guy, make some noise. Also, I haven't even dropped this in the insider chat yet. Daquan Hardy after, I forgot something else. Do we save it for another episode?
I don't know what it is, so maybe we do.
Ryan, be more assertive. What do you think? Should we save it? Or
another episode?
Yeah, he's like, I gotta go to bed. I gotta get up tomorrow. I do too. Hoops
Finals
in the morning.
week, it's fine.
6 a.m. All right, so to Corey Couch, keep him on your radar. All right, that's going to do it. I'm spinning out of control, exhausted. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Get on that insider text line, 716-528-6727. Get locked in for tomorrow. I will send all of the observations from practice to you first. Take care, everybody. For Ryan, I'm Matt. See you later.